About 2 years ago, in Chicagoland, I was having a 2-hour lunch with a retired United Methodist Church pastor, beautiful man. And I was sitting with him to discuss the issue of persecution of Christians in India. And about 90 minutes into this 2-hour lunch, I thought that I had already adequately described the issue. But then he asked me, well, so what does persecution of Christians in India look like? Does it look like social boycotting, economic boycotting, job discrimination, that sort of thing? And I said to him, yes, Pastor. Kind of. That's part of the whole parcel. But here's what discrimination of Christians in India looks like. It looks like Christians are gathered, as they tend to do, on Sunday in their church to worship Jesus Christ. And then suddenly a mob, usually an armed mob, assembles outside. A mob of 50 or 100 or 250 or 500 people. And they burst into the sanctuary. And they begin smashing everything. They attack the pastor. They attack the congregation. They beat them up. And if the police are not already there in cahoots with this mob, then the mob drags the congregation and the clergy down to the police station, turns them over, and the police file charges against the victims, not against the perpetrators. That's what persecution of Christians in India right now today looks like. And I can see when I explained this to this retired UMC pastor, a light bulb go off in his head. And he said to me, oh, like the Nazis? And I said, yes, sir. Exactly like the Nazis. Well, according to some reports over the past couple of years, at times, as many as 95% of violent incidents against Christians in India have been of exactly this kind, this mob attack on churches, this mob style. And the New York Times recently summarized it succinctly. They wrote, anti-Christian vigilantes are sweeping through villages, storming churches, burning Christian literature, attacking schools, and assaulting worshipers. In many cases, the police and members of India's governing party are helping them. In church after church in India, the very act of worship has become dangerous. Many organizations, NGOs, which track these sorts of incidents of persecution of Indian Christians. For instance, the Delhi-based United Christian Forum, they reported that in 2023 last year, there were 720 attacks, violent attacks, on Christians throughout India. Now that's in contrast to 127 attacks back in 2014, when India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi first came to power in India. And that's a 6-fold increase in violence against Christians in a decade. The trend, it's been a consistent, constant upward trajectory, with every single year being worse than the one before. Groups like Fiacona, the Federation of Indian American Christian Organizations of North America, led by our brother, Reverend Neil Christie, as the executive director, they have an intensive, a comprehensive system for documentation of these kinds of incidents. And they recorded over 1,200 attacks on Indian Christians last year, violent attacks. All of the major watchdog outfits around the world, which track global persecution of Christians, report that the situation in India has gone from bad to worse to catastrophic. Wow. Open Doors USA, for one example, ranks India in the top 11 most dangerous countries in the world in which to be a Christian. They call the persecution level extreme, and it's so extreme. The conditions for Christians in India, as ranked by that organization, are actually categorized as worse than countries like China or even Saudi Arabia. How bad has it gotten? Moving towards a conclusion, well, just look at two major incidents in 2023 in two separate states in India. In Chhattisgarh, central India, local villages first, they banned Christians from even praying in private in their own homes. And then huge mobs began to systematically attack, loot, and burn down churches and the homes of Christians, trying to ethnically cleanse them from the region. Over 2,500 Christians were displaced by that violence. And in Manipur, I hope many of you have already heard of what happened there. Raise your hand if you've heard of what happened in Manipur. Few of you? Manipur. In Manipur, mobs armed with modern weaponry, assault rifles, declared war on tribal Christians, slaughtering and raping them for months, killing maybe 200 people or more, and burning down over 400 churches, and displacing 65,000 Christians from their homes in Manipur. Why is all of this happening? It's basically for the same reason as the genocide in Gaza. Religious nationalism. Hindu nationalism, an ideology which is very similar to Zionism or to Christian nationalism, has taken over India. It is the guiding philosophy of Prime Minister Modi and of his political party. Also known as Hindutva, this ideology is very open about what it believes and about what it wants. Hindutva believes that the only true patriots of India are Hindus, and that religious minorities like Christians and also Muslims are foreign to India, internal threats, and even traitors because they are not Hindu. Hindutva believes, because Christians and Muslims are not Hindus, Hindutva wants to eliminate, to exterminate them from India, and we're seeing them putting that goal into action with ever-increasing speed. Now, our U.S. government knows all about this, inside and out. The U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom, International Religious Freedom, keeps recommending that the U.S. State Department should take action on these atrocious violations of religious freedom in India. Civil society groups in D.C. keep begging members of U.S. Congress to do something, or at least to say something. But the government refuses to act. Almost no one in Congress will get off of their I'm sorry, I forgot I'm in a church gathering. Get off of their rear end to demand action. They won't act, but the good news that I have to share with you is that the United Methodist Church is acting. The UMC is acting. In all of this violence in India, many organizations of many faiths, many backgrounds are working against these atrocities here in America. But do you know which voice has been almost entirely absent from this dialogue? The voice of the church. Most leaders in our churches, and I'm talking across all denominations, they are almost entirely ignorant that there even is persecution of Christians in India, let alone how severe it is. That is changing here in the UMC. The voice of the church. You see, the UMC is leading the way and setting the example for other denominations by being the very first denomination in America to act as a church polity in passing a resolution yesterday through committee, now gone to general consent calendar, condemning this religious nationalism of Hindutva and calling on the U.S. State Department to stand up for our bruised, our bleeding, and our dying Christian sisters and brothers in India. Very last thing. Another thing that's happening with the UMC. Reverend Neil Christie and I, along with some others, through this organization based in DC, Fiacona, which represents Indian American Christians throughout America, we have been circulating a letter, we are currently circulating a letter, to the U.S. State Department, which will be signed by Christians. We currently have 110 signatures, almost all of them. And guess who's leading the way in signing this letter? Take a wild place. The UMC. We've had not only the president of Wesley Theological Seminary sign it, but also so far 4 bishops from the UMC. And I implore all of you to consider signing and circulating this letter, to stand up and speak out for our persecuted family in India. Please speak with Reverend Neil about how to do so. And so I pray that this Asian American Caucus of the UMC and the broader UMC body continue leading the way on this issue. You see, the church has a voice. And when it raises its voice, the raising of the church's voice has the potential to move mountains. Yes. Thank you.